This video is for anyone who needs a little bit of help finishing CRQ 4.1 for English 1 with Miss Gorley. So the directions say, read Friar Lawrence's soliloquy from Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 3. Then write a 5 to 7 sentence paragraph where you answer the question below. Explain the central message of Friar Lawrence's soliloquy. So two important terms in there that may seem unfamiliar that we need to know. A friar is a priest or religious leader. So Friar Lawrence is the priest or pastor in the play who mentors and marries Romeo and Juliet. A soliloquy in a play is a speech delivered by a single character when no one else is there to hear it. So a monologue is a speech when a character is giving a long speech when there's other characters there to listen. Soliloquy, they are by themselves. So let's read the soliloquy and see if we can figure out his central message. Friar Lawrence. The earth is nature's mother and also nature's tomb. Plants are born out of the earth and they are buried in the earth when they die. From the earth's womb, many different sorts of plants and animals come forth, and the earth provides her children with many excellent forms of nourishment. Everything nature creates has some special property, and each one is different. Herbs, plants, and stones possess great power. There is nothing on earth that is so evil that it does not provide the earth with some special quality. And there is nothing that does not turn bad if it's put to the wrong use and abused. Virtue, or good behavior, turns to vice, bad behavior, if it is misused. Vice sometimes becomes virtue through the right activity. Inside the little shell of this weak flower, there is both poison and powerful medicine. If you smell it, you feel good all over your body. But if you taste it, you die. There are two opposite elements in everything, in men as well as in herbs, good and evil. Okay, so Friar Lawrence by himself gives the speech. He's a pastor, but he's also kind of like a doctor or pharmacist. And back then, they used plants and herbs as medicine to heal people. So what I notice is he's kind of talking about these two opposite things, how things have both good and evil in them, right? He talks about how earth is both nature's mother, it creates life, and it's also our tomb. It's where we die, right? A tomb is where we bury bodies. Things are born out of the earth, and then they're buried in the earth, right? It talks about how he holds a weak flower, and he says there's poison and medicine in that flower. There are two opposite things in everything, men and plants or herbs, good and evil. Right here, he talks about good and evil can kind of turn into each other, right? Our goodness can turn to badness if we misuse it, and our badness can sometimes become goodness if we do the right activity. So when we look at our CRQ, the first thing we need to do in races is to restate the question. Okay, now that does not mean we just copy paste it. It means we tag it and restate. So my trick is that I cut out the question words, right? I cut out explain, and I start here, and typically you can add by, because, or is, depending on what the question is. So if I take out explain, I would write the central message of Friar Lawrence's soliloquy is, that's my restate. Now I need to answer it. So there's many ways you can word it. You can definitely word it whatever makes sense the most to you. I'm going to say something like, is that there is good and evil in all things, right? That's what I kind of think he's talking about, how there's good and bad in nature, in plants, in humans. Everything has the capability to be good or evil. Now I want to start giving evidence and explanation to support my answer. So I can start out with phrases like these. So I can say, for instance, I want to make that a little bigger. Sorry, bothers me if it's not the right color. For instance, you want to give a little bit of intro for the evidence. So say, for instance, Friar Lawrence says, and then quotation marks, because I'm about to put a quote. So we want to pick quotes that we think best support that main idea that there's good and evil in all things, right? So I like this last line. There are opposite elements in everything, in men as well as in herbs, good and evil. I'm going to copy that. Remember, copy, highlight it, hold down Control, and click C. Now I bring my mouse down here, I hold down Control and click V. And I want to make sure after the period, I put quotation marks again. So now I have, for instance, Friar Lawrence says, there are two opposite elements in everything, in men as well as in herbs, good and evil. Now I need to explain what that quote means and how it supports my main idea. So I can use phrases like these. So I can say, this evidence shows. And now I first need to explain what this evidence even means. So both men and herbs, so that humans and plants, that's what an herb is, have both good and evil in them, can be both good and evil, right? Evil at the same time. I need to explain this back now to my central message, right? This helps support Friar Lawrence's central idea that there is good and evil in all things. Okay, so I've explained what the quote means, and I've connected it back to the main idea. Now I can give another example. Here are some phrases you can say. So I can say another example would be, again, you want to introduce the quote. When Friar Lawrence says, quotation marks. And now you can come back here and pick another thing. So there's lots of good quotes you can use. I like the flower, how it can be both poison and medicine. I like when it talks about the earth being both our mother and our tomb. I like when it talks about virtue and vice. So you can really pick whatever one you like best. I'm going to pick this one, just this first line here. So remember, copy, Control C, come down here, Control, and then click V, and another set of quotation marks after the period. So we introduce the evidence, quotation marks, quote, period, quotation marks. Now we're going to explain what that means. Okay, so again, you can use one of these starter phrases. I'm going to say, according to this evidence, Friar Lawrence is saying that. Remember, I could just say he is saying that, but it's always good to be specific and use the character's name when you can. So instead of just saying he, I'm going to say his name again. Friar Lawrence is saying that, okay, what is he saying here? That even a little weak flower has the ability to both give life and give death, to be poisonous and be medicine, right? A little weak flower can both give life, or he says medicine, right? And death, he says poison. Okay, so that's what the quote means. How does this support his main idea? So if a flower can do both of these things, this supports the idea that there is good and evil in everything. Okay, so my first sentence, I use that starter phrase, I explain what that quote means, then I tie it back to my main idea. Now for my conclusion, I'm going to wrap up and connect all my points together back to this main question, what is the central message? So I can start out with phrases like this. I can say to conclude, or therefore in conclusion, I want to restate my question again. The point of the question is asking about what is the central message. The central message of Friar Lawrence's soliloquy is, and now I don't just want to copy and paste that directly. I want to look at how I've been explaining it and see if I can kind of sum up, mostly kind of tie together my two explanation sentences. Right? These are the places where I put my own thoughts. That's what I want to focus on. So here I talked about how humans and plants can both be good and evil at the same time. Here I talked about how a flower can give both life and death. So his message is that there can be both good and bad in all things, such as humans, plants, and even weak flowers, right? Because those are the main examples I focus on. So there can be both good and bad in all things, such as humans, plants, and even weak flowers. I summed up this one talks about humans and plants. This one talks about weak flowers. So I've tied it all together in my last sentence. Okay, so this is how you can write your CRQ 4.1 about Friar Lawrence's soliloquy. Make sure you complete this and turn it in. It is an important grade. And if you need help, just reach out and ask.